After 19 years, since the previous side-scroller Metroid game that was not a remix, Metroid Dread finally arrives on the Switch. Among Metroid fans, this was a game that had been in development for many years, well before the Nintendo Switch released. According to Sakamoto, the producer of Metroid Dread, he had made his first attempt to develop Metroid Dread around 2005 for the Nintendo DS system, while the second attempt was made in 2008, both of which did not meet Sakamoto's expectations, which would lead to its development put on hold. It would not be until E3 2021 that we would know that Metroid Dread had risen out of development hell and released on October 8, 2021, 16 years after its initial attempt. The game opens with the story of the Metroids and the X-Parasites. A recap of Metroid Fusion then leaves us with landing on planet ZDR to investigate an X-Parasite that was sighted, as well as finding out what happened to the 7 Emmy dispatched to ZDR. Already, the information is given to us briefly, but enough to understand what leads up to Metroid Dread, without overstaying its welcome. These details would especially be important for new players, giving them and veterans alike sufficient preparation for the story to begin. Further complications arrive, however, when we are attacked by an unknown Chozo warrior, adding further mystery to the story. Who was the warrior, and why did he attack Samus? What caused the Emmy to start pursuing Samus? Are the X-Parasites truly alive? We would only know more as we made our way to the planet's surface to get to the ship. As the story began to develop more, I found myself even more intrigued, wanting to continue with as little delay as possible. This did, however, lead me to speeding through the game quite a bit. It's been a long time since Samus' last 2D adventure, and the years have been good to her. The controls have overall felt incredibly smooth and responsive. I had very little trouble with her movements, including the morph ball. Thanks to the sliding ability Samus has, less stops are needed when going into small spaces if morph ball is required. The melee counter also makes a return from the 3DS game, Samus Returns, but with some additional tweaks to make the melee counter feel better in the process. While you may still stay in place to use the counter, you're given more freedom of movement, and it makes the mechanic feel less forced. It helps that you are rewarded well if you do successfully counter an enemy and kill them. The power-ups obtained throughout the game are also very well designed and found in a manner where you're not waiting too long between each one to find before you find the next one. Veterans may recognize some power-ups from previous Metroid games, such as Fusion, Samus Returns, and even Other M. Each power-up you find will easily open up even more means of interactivity with the overall environment of ZDR. True to Metroid fashion, exploration is a key part of this game, but unlike Fusion and Other M, where you were given instructions as to where to go, you're left finding where you need to go on your own, much like other previous titles, as Adam will not tell you where you need to go. There are moments I found myself exploring a bit here and there, but the road to your next upgrade to get you further could be surprisingly straightforward at times. Despite that, however, the game never felt too linear as I continued to play. The encounters you have with the Emmy really emphasizes the Dread part of Metroid Dread. While there are specific zones they can only be found in, the moment they spot you, the adrenaline gets heightened, and your first priority is to get away. While you can counter the Emmy if they catch you, you only have 2 small windows to do so, and it's not advised. Running away is your best bet until you have the means to destroy them. The Emmy were excellent for adding that fear into the game that Sakamoto had hoped to give. Their maps are quite large, giving you different ways to escape should they be in pursuit of you. However, as a result, it has made the maps in ZDR much larger, which results in a slight bit of bloat. While there are some pickups to find in the Emmy zones, there is very little to do otherwise after defeating them, so it can make backtracking a little tedious at times. I did initially believe the backtracking would be much more of a slog, but on working towards 100%, I had found that backtracking was much less of an issue than I had believed. The bosses you fight outside of the Emmy are easily the best parts of Metroid Dread. Many of them have felt well designed and genuinely fun, while also providing a reasonable challenge. None of them ever felt too easy during my first encounter. Most, if not all of them, do have a window where you can melee counter them as well, and when successful, it feels so rewarding as you unload your missiles into the boss during the counter sequence that follows. While the enemy utilized fear well, the other bosses truly felt invigorating to fight, and when defeating them was a great feeling of triumph. I do hope that future Metroid titles utilize the boss battles as well as they done in the ones in Dread. They did excellent with them. The expansions you find are pretty evenly spread to each of the regional areas of ZDR, none of them feeling like I had overstayed my welcome as I continued to find the rest of the ones I was missing. Finding some of them could be quite fun. The highest point of finding expansions, however, were through the speed booster puzzles. It really felt like you had to get a bit creative with using speed booster and shine spark effectively in order to reap your reward. Finding expansions does get easier after you progress to a certain point, but there are plenty to find without much trouble. My one issue, however, is that energy parts have made a return from Other M, which are similar to the pieces of heart you would find in a Legend of Zelda game. While games similar to Metroid, such as Hollow Knight or Ori, make use of health pieces, it never felt like it was made to pad the playtime. When it was introduced in Other M, it just simply felt like an unnecessary way to pick up more items for that sweet 100% completion. It does feel that a little bit in Dread, but that could also be me being old-fashioned, considering Metroid always had full energy tanks to find rather than energy parts. That said, the puzzles were enjoyable enough to not take far too much issue with it. I don't have a lot to say about the graphics, except, wow. The world of ZDR is mesmerizingly beautiful. Even with the Switch's graphics, it really gave a feeling of life into the world as I traveled through the depths of ZDR between the tranquility of Artaria, the sweltering heat of Cadaris, and through the watery depths of Barenia, to name a few locations. And even with how gorgeous the game looked, none of it felt too distracting from the overall gameplay. Each location had its own environment that just felt natural. I truthfully don't think I have a single bad thing to say about the overall graphics of Metroid Dread, as they had done a fantastic job with it. The clicking sounds that come from the enemies to let you know when you need to use a melee counterattack sticks out, making it feel like it isn't a hassle to utilize that ability when needed. Other sound effects complement the graphics to further enhance the environment of Planet ZDR. Now, the soundtrack had some strong and weak points. The boss battle themes, as well as the enemy encounters, enhanced the invigoration and fear that I would feel respectively when I would listen to them. However, the music outside of those had a more somber feeling overall, almost feeling isolated. While that does fit the environment, there weren't many that stuck out to me. One that did stick out was Farenia, which gave off a heightened sense of tension as you continue to explore that location. But other than that, I'm not sure if I could find myself listening to the other themes as frequently. Of course, in due time, I wager they'd grow on me as well. Samus's long-awaited sequel to Fusion was one worth waiting for in my opinion. The gameplay felt as good as Samus Returns did, with slight updates to make the game feel even better to play. The bosses were extremely well designed, and the enemy played up to fear quite well, even if defeating them felt a bit monotonous on occasion. The maps were quite large, which allowed for multiple means of escape and plenty of exploration, but did cause a slight bloat as a result. The graphics were gorgeous, and the soundtrack had some pretty good pieces, but some that could be forgettable. I suppose I should talk about the length of the game as well. I had actually almost forgotten. On my first playthrough, I had finished the game in around 5 hours, unless you want to count the hour worth of deaths, and it had taken me 2.5 more hours to complete it with 100%, leading up to about 7.5 hours total. While that sounds short, 2D Metroid games usually are, trading their length for a greater replay value. Metroid Dread is likely going to be no exception to this. It is possible to beat this game in under 4 hours, as you are rewarded with ending images based on your clear time as well as difficulty, being just simply beating the game, beat it in less than 8 hours, and beat it in less than 4 hours. As of creating this video, I had beaten Metroid Dread again recently in about 3 hours, which I suppose that renders my statement about map load moot. On the note of difficulty, there is also a hard mode that unlocks when you complete your first playthrough. I have yet to try it, but will do so sometime after this video is made. I am curious as to how they will enhance the challenge and look forward to it. In the end, the positives really shine, and I would recommend this game to anyone, new or veteran players alike. I don't think you'll be disappointed. If I had to give it a rating, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it comes close to it, I'd say. With this being the final chapter of the Metroid saga, where will Nintendo go with the series now that Dread has drawn this conclusion? I hope that this game's success and sales will show Nintendo that the series is alive and well, and people would want to see more of Samus's adventures in the future. Metroid Prime 4 is still in development with Retro Studios at this time, rather than Bandai Namco previously. If you ask me, they should have stuck with Retro Studios in the first place, considering their success with Metroid Primes 1 through 3 in the first place. But hey, maybe there was a reason behind this decision that I don't understand. Perhaps we'll hear something next year for Metroid Prime 4. I hope so. After Metroid Dread, I'm just even more excited to see Metroid Prime's 4th chapter be released, as well as future titles for the franchise. Until then, see you next mission. Oh, and before I end the video, I want to thank you so much for watching this review. This was my first time creating a video review, so I imagine I've made some mistakes as well as overlooked some important details I needed to go over in this review. Not to mention, I've stumbled over my words a lot when working on this. I plan on doing more reviews along with other videos, but will take some time due to personal and work life, so my upload schedule is not going to be very consistent. That said, my next review will be on The Lightbringer, an indie title developed by Rock Square Thunder, released on Steam and Nintendo Switch. See you all in the next review.